Good evening, and once again, welcome back to Mo's channel. Tonight, I want to wrap up. First of all, tonight is February 14th, 2019. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you lovebirds, and I hope you have a great evening tonight. Tonight, I want to wrap up my discussion on business. In the previous videos, I spoke about marketing, then operations. Tonight, I want to talk about finance. Now, to truly understand finance, I'm going to take a step into biology, and I'm going to look at the human body. In the human body, you have the cardiovascular or cardiopulmonary system, which basically consists of the heart, the blood vessels, arteries, veins, arterioles, ventricles, capillaries, and so forth, and the lungs. Now, the cardiovascular system takes in oxygen through the nose, through the mouth. The oxygen goes into the lungs. From the heart, you have blood vessels that connect into the lungs and come out of the lungs. The blood going into the lungs has no oxygen. That's why you see blue blood. That's blood lacking oxygen. In the lungs, the blood picks up oxygen. It's attached to hemoglobin. And then that oxygenated blood is pumped back into the heart and then circulated throughout the body. The oxygen provides the cells in your body the energy needed to perform metabolic actions. Metabolic actions are simply the activities the cell performs to grow and continue to exist. Therefore, oxygen is the fuel that powers your cells. In a similar way, money, cash, whatever you want to call it, is the fuel that powers your business. If you're operating a storefront, a retail operation, you need money to pay for rent. You need money to pay for electricity. You need money to pay for supplies, what you're going to sell, merchandise. If you're operating a law firm, you need money to pay the paralegals. You need money to pay the rent. You need money to pay the lawyers. So cash, money, is that vital element without which your business cannot function. Finance has three primary focuses. Well, four. Pay your bills, collect money that's owed to you, source money for the business, and control the money as it flows through your business. Paying your bills has to deal with accounts payables. Now, when you and I, as a consumer, go to a store and we buy a product and we put it in our debit card or we pay cash, that is a cash payment. If you put that purchase on a credit card, that is a credit payment. And you owe your credit card provider at the end of a month a portion of what you purchased. In business, if I am a retail operation and I purchase merchandise from my suppliers, or from a hospital and I purchase medical supplies from a supplier, typically I do not pay them cash. There are payment terms that are arranged such that if you're my supplier and I acquire $500 worth of merchandise from you, I can pay you back within 15 days and receive a discount, or within 30 days and not receive that discount. I won't go into those details. Do research yourself, look into accounts payables, net 30, net 15, and so forth. At the same time, when you walk into a store as a consumer and you pay with a credit card, they get their money right away. But if I am a bigger business and I'm doing a business transaction with another business and I provide services to them, I might not get my money right away. I might get it in 15 days or 30 days. That's accounts receivables function. Sourcing funds. There are two primary ways that a business can source funds. And that's regardless of whether it's a limited partnership, whether it's a limited liability corporation, whether it's an S Corp, whether it's a sole proprietorship. The number one way is to sell an equity stake in your company. So if I'm a sole proprietorship, and sole proprietorship simply means a business that is owned by one individual. If I'm a sole proprietorship, I could sell you 10% of my company, and I use that cash that you give me to fund my operations or expansion. If I am a corporation, I will assume a large corporation, because even a small corporation can sell shares. A partnership will generally sell partnership interests or interests in the partnership. Now, a larger corporation or a publicly traded corporation, all that's meant by publicly traded is that this is a corporation whose shares are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. There used to be American Stock Exchange. There used to be the Pacific Stock Exchange. But now you just have the New York Stock Exchange and the NASD, National Association of Securities Dealers. Companies whose shares are traded, bought, and sold on those exchanges, and those exchanges are nothing more than auction markets. And what an auction market is, I might have this cab and I'll propose a sales price to you, $50. You might come back and say, nah, I'll pay you $40. Or better yet, I might offer it to you, I might offer it for $50. Look, if I have any buyers, if I have 5 buyers, I might say $52. If I have 3 buyers, I might say $55. If I have 2 buyers, I might say $60. And then I only have 1 buyer, so I sell it. The stock market operates in more or less the same manner. You have, on the New York Stock Exchange, you have specialists. On the NASDAQ, you have market makers. These are people that hold huge inventory of stock and they offer it for sale. If you like the price, you buy it. If you don't like the price, you don't buy it. So that's an auction market, back and forth. Now, when you're dealing with, when you issue stocks on a public exchange, it's called an initial public offering. What happens, you have investment bankers who form the underwriting syndicate. They will buy that stock from you, the issuing company. They might buy it from you for $10 a share. And then they'll go out there and sell it for $15 a share. One thing that needs to be understood is that the issuing company only receives money from the IPO. So if I'm Facebook and I go public at $100 a share and I issue 1 million shares, I get $100 million. If the price of the stock goes to $500, I, as a company, do not benefit. However, as an insider who receives stock options or stock as part of my compensation, I benefit by the price of that stock going up. That is one of the primary reasons why you see a lot of companies offshore and outsource in order to cut costs. Because when you reduce costs, you increase earnings. The higher the earnings, the higher the stock price. So that's how the CEOs, the CFOs, and so forth benefit from a stock price going up. And that is one of the primary drivers why so many American jobs have gone to China, Vietnam, Philippines, and India. So that's equity, issuing equity. That's one way for a company to generate money. The second method is credit. Now, credit comes in several forms. If you're a small business owner, you could borrow money from someone. That's a debt. That's crediting. That's credit. That's a liability. You could also go to the bank and borrow money. That's a debt. If you're a larger business that's established, you could issue bonds. All that a bond is a promise to pay. But it comes with interest payments. So if I issue you a bond for $10,000 with a coupon of 5%, that means that every year, and let's say that bond is 10 years, it has a 10-year maturity. Maturity is the time at which the principal in the bond has to be repaid. So 5%, $10,000, every year I'm going to pay you $500 in interest payments. After 10 years, I will redeem the bond and pay you your $10,000 back. So over 10 years, you make $500 a year for 10 years, that's $5,000 plus the $10,000 principal. So at the end of the day, you spend $10,000 and you get $15,000 back. Large corporations also have lines of credit established with banks. They use these lines of credit to fund their working capital. Working capital is what a company spends on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for general operations, such as paying salaries, paying utilities, paying supplies, and things of that nature. So, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and generating money to fund operations or to fund expansion or growth. The fourth function that finance plays for a business is to control the money and how it is spent. This is done in two ways. Number one, you generate a budget. You generate a budget that's going to cover the entire year. How much money do we expect to receive? How much money do we expect to spend to receive that money? Typically, you'll have a top-down and bottom-up process. The top-down process is where the executives, the senior management meet and determine from a strategic objective how much money do we need to spend to hit our target goals. A target goal might be we currently have 10% market share. At the end of the next fiscal year, we want to attain 15% market share. That's a strategic objective. In order to attain that 15% increased market share, we might have to increase our marketing activities, our sales activities. We might have to expand our operations, and we might have to enhance the support processes that keep the business going. So the executives will sit, meet, determine what they want to do, how much additional money they need to spend, and then from that top level budgeting, they'll hand it down to their reports, the directors, vice presidents, managers, and so forth, and tell them, this is what you have allocated. Now, within that, prepare a budget to meet your needs such that you could support our strategic objectives. So that's now the bottom up. They go back and forth and they reconcile the two till they come upon a final budget. Budgeting is just the first step. If you leave it there, the budget is worthless. A budget is only as good as how well the company adheres to the budget. So, if you're the IT department and I've budgeted $10 million for your operations and growth, and I don't monitor that budget, and you wind up spending $15 million, it was a waste of time. But if you're the IT department, I've allocated $10 million to you for the year, and I track your spending, and where there's deviance, I provide corrective action to ensure that at the end of the year you have not spent more than $10 million, then that budget was worth it. So, collecting money. Oh, and one more thing on controlling the expenditures, the use of money. That's where the accounting function comes in. The accounting function records all transactions that the business engages in. Now, from these recordings, generates what are called financial statements. These financial statements are used by the business to analyze their financial performance for the year and provide corrective action where there is negative deviance. So you have the accounts receivable, accounts payable, you have the cash sourcing, and then you have the controlling function. Now, what does this do for you as a business? Let's look at accounts payable. Most merchants, most businesses will offer you a discount. It might be 5%, might be 10%, it might be 15%. If you pay them early. Now, it might not be to your advantage to pay early because based on your cycle, your business cycle, you might not collect your money from sales for 30 days. So it might not do you good to take advantage of that 10-15% discount if it's going to negatively impact your cash flow. However, if you're missing out on a lot of discounts, you're spending a lot of unnecessary money. So by looking at accounts payable and aging your accounts payable and determining how much discounts are we losing, you can then go back and look at your business cycle to determine how can we adjust our business cycle such that we could take advantage of these discounts that we're letting go. From accounts receivables, you can use the data from accounts receivables to determine which customers are not paying on time, which customers are in default. You can then use that information to determine how to extend credit to customers, such as some customers who do not pay on time, you might come back and say, well, I'm not going to extend credit to you. If you want this transaction, I need payment up front. Or you could say, if I sell you $20,000 in product, pay me $10,000 cash, and I'll extend you credit for the remaining $10,000. It helps prevent loss. It helps you collect your cash quicker, so you're not in a cash shortage situation, and it helps you enhance and revise your business cycle. Sourcing cash. It might be cheaper to issue equity, or it might be cheaper to issue debt. It might make more sense to get a line of credit or a loan from a bank than it does to issue a bond. It might make more sense to issue $500,000 in credit and $500,000 in debt. All of these decisions are what your sourcing capability enables you to make. You want to obtain cash at the lowest cost to you. Now, cost can be defined in two ways: monetary and any constrictions the cash source may impose on you. If you go to a bank and you borrow $1 million, the bank might impose certain restrictions on what you as a business can do because they want to ensure they can get their $1 million back. So they don't want you taking risky ventures. The same goes with issuing debt, bonds. On the other hand, if you sell equity in your company, I now have influence on how you run your company because I'm now a shareholder. Therefore, you cannot just make decisions as you would have without any shareholders. You now have people to answer to. So all your decisions have to take that into account. So that is the cost with equity. These are things you need to consider as you decide how you're going to raise capital. As far as controlling, I've already discussed the budget. It's critical. If you're going to issue a budget, your budget has to be realistic, especially on the revenue side. If currently you're pulling $5 million in revenue, to come around and say next year we intend to pull $10 million in revenue, doubling your revenue, that is not realistic. If you plan your budget based on that assumption, you will fail because halfway through the year you'll realize we're not going to hit that $10 million target. But you've planned everything to align with that $10 million revenue target. Now, all of a sudden, you have to cut back head count, you have to streamline, you have to reduce expenses. You're messing your business up. So, when you budget, when you make projections, sales projections, be realistic. Create 3 scenarios. The best case scenario, we're going to hit $7.5 million. The worst case scenario, we'll actually drop in revenue, $4 million. And the expected scenario, will hit $6 million in revenue. Prepare budgets that accommodate each of those scenarios. And as the year goes along, track your actual revenue to determine, are we in the best case, are we in the expected, are we in the worst case scenario? Based on that tracking, revise your budget numbers. This will ensure that at the end of the year, if you actually only hit $4 million in revenue, your expenses were aligned with that. Effective management of your finances is one of the things that will guarantee your success as a business. If you look at most businesses that have failed, they've not failed so much because their marketing was off or their operations was off. They failed because their finances fell off. Finances fall off when your revenues did not exceed your expenses. You cannot be in business for long if you're spending more than you're pulling in. As a small business owner, my recommendation is do not expect to make your first sale for at least 6 months. What does that mean? Before you even start off, ensure that you have 6 months worth of expenses in the bank. Now, don't expect to go to a bank and tell them, hey, can I borrow $20,000? Because the bank is going to ask you, how long have you been in business? If you say 6 months, they'll ask you, what is your revenue? If you have no revenue, the bank will tell you the door is right there. So when you plan your business, budget for 6 months with no revenue. Itemize all your potential costs. If you're starting a retail shop, what is your rent? What is 6 months worth of merchandise? What are utilities? What are your other expenses? If it comes to $3,000 a month, put aside $18,000. That way, if your first sale does not come until the 5th month, then you've been in business that long. But if you sit there and expect I'm going to make my first sale as soon as I open my door, and you only put aside $3,000, guess what? You'll only be in business for 1 month. What's even better is to line up customers before you open your business. That way you know there's revenue that's going to come in as soon as I open my doors. So I've looked at the 3 critical elements of any business: marketing, operations, and finance. In the next video, I want to talk about a new paradigm for business, a new methodology, a new way to look at business and structure a business. This is going to be based upon the human body and the systems within the human body that enable you to wake up every day and live your life every day. Specifically, I will be looking at the cardiopulmonary system, whose responsibility is to take in oxygen, circulate oxygen throughout the body, and circulate elemental nutrients throughout the body. I will look at the digestive system, whose essential purpose is to take in food, break that food down into fundamental elements such as nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, your amino acids, your carbohydrates, your lipids or fatty acids. Feed that to the blood system and have the bloodstream circulate that throughout the body. The third system I'll consider is the neurological system, or what they call the central nervous system, which is your brain, your eyes, your nose, your ears, your skin, sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of hearing, sense of touch. All right? Processing those signals and sending signals to the body to perform actions. The fourth system I'll look at is the muscular skeletal system, which comprises your bones, the ligaments, the tendons, and the muscles. This enables you to move towards food and to run away from danger. From these 4 systems, I will create a new model for a business. A new business model that will create a business that organically grows and expands on its own. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in. God bless and good night.